Hello, everyone. It is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, here with another exciting live stream. In this video, I'm going to go over the top 10 things that I didn't really like about the new Aquaman movie. Keep in mind, I think the new Aquaman movie is the best film in the current DCEU. I think it's better than Wonder Woman and better than Suicide Squad, which before were the two DCEU movies that I really enjoyed. But this video is dedicated to the top 10 things I didn't like about the new Aquaman movie. Spoilers ahead, there are definitely spoilers in this top 10 list, so if you don't want to get spoiled, feel free to, just not watch this until you've seen the movie, or until you just decide that you do want to watch this video. And yeah, without further ado, let's go in. A lot of these are phrased as like questions, so I just go, "Why did da na 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 na?" And then I just move forward. And if you've seen the movie, you'll think about it and be like, "Yeah, that was kind of weird." But anyways, the first one is Aquaman's mom clearly understands English, but for whatever reason, she acts like a Tarzan character at the beginning of the movie. I actually really don't like the scenes with Aquaman's mom at the very beginning where she just acts stupid toward Aquaman's father, but Aquaman's father isn't saying or doing anything that would show that he was like weird. And I get that she's like on high alert. She's in like a strange place and she doesn't know what's going on. But I just feel like they overplayed that aspect, and her character is shown to be like a rational thinking, intelligent character. And I just feel like they wouldn't act that way. It felt like the most out of character thing for her to do is just to be like, like the whole time. You think she would just hear that he's speaking calmly and that he's not doing anything weird and then like not dick on him. Also, Atlantis has like fairly advanced technology. I don't think she would look at a TV and be like, TV, and like throw a trident at a TV. I don't know. I just felt like the scenes with Aquaman's mom at the beginning weren't very good. I wasn't a big fan. The action scenes were cool, but I just felt like her weird fish out of water routine was just not that interesting. Number two, Aquaman's father is always going up on the dock and waiting for Aquaman's mom to one day come home. It's a nice romantic gesture that he does all the time. But there's a scene where Aquaman's father is talking about wanting Aquaman's mom back, and Aquaman is like, I know she's not gonna come back. She's dead. And the dad's like, you don't know that. And he's like, no, I do know that. She's not coming back. She's dead. Now, I guess the thing that I didn't like about that is later him and Mira talk about it. They talk about how Aquaman's mom is dead. She was like sent to the trenches where she died. And then Aquaman, as a teenager, there's like a flashback where he's told, like, your mom is dead. She was sent to the trenches where she died. So when Aquaman's telling his dad, like, I know my mom is dead, he doesn't tell him the story. And it's weird because you think even teenage Aquaman would have just told his dad the story. Like, if you know, like, for a fact that your mom's dead, and you know because someone told you who would know that information, you should just be comfortable enough to go up to your dad and be like, hey, this is hard news, but mom's dead. Here's why. Here's who told me. Your dad may not necessarily move on, but if you feel like you have that level of closure that your dad doesn't have, and you have like this high level of resentment, and your dad's like, I don't understand why you like hate Atlantis and why you won't accept the birthright that your mom always wanted you to have, then maybe you can answer all your dad's questions by just telling him this one story that does answer all those questions. It explains why you're like, I don't vibe with Atlantis, and it explains why you feel like your mom's never coming back. Because someone from Atlantis told you your mom's not coming back. It just seems like you could just share it with your dad. And he's been able to sit on this for years. It's not like Aquaman just learns this information. He's known it from a teenager on up, and his dad still is always waiting for his mom to come home, and Aquaman's just thinking to himself, she's never coming back. It's like, then just tell him. Just tell. Even if you feel like it'll hurt your dad, in the long run, it's better for him to know. And if you're just going to say stuff to your dad like, she's never coming back. I know she's never coming back. I know she's dead. Then if you're going to say stuff with that level of confidence, then just tell him. Tell him why you know. Tell him how you know so that he'll know too. It just doesn't make sense to just tell him because he thinks his son's just being like pessimistic. No, you've learned that this is like a real thing, even though it's later revealed that his mom isn't dead. But he didn't know that. Tell your dad what you do know, though. It doesn't make sense. Next up, why does Mira sneak Aquaman into Atlantis when she could have just brought the message to him directly? So the whole reason why Mira sneaks Aquaman into Atlantis in the first place is so that he can be given the message that they have to go to the desert to decode so that they can learn the clues to find Atlan's trident. But if you already know that you need to take the message to the desert to decode it, then you don't need to bring Aquaman to Atlantis to get the message. Mira could have just gotten the message, went to the surface, which she already does. She already goes to the surface. So just make it one trip. Take the message, go to the surface, be like, yo, Aquaman, I have like this message. We got to decode it in the desert. Once we do, it'll help us find Atlan's trident, and then you can challenge your brother Orm, and you can prevent the war on the surface world. And it prevents Aquaman from being able to fuck up the plan. Because Aquaman fucks up the plan just by being like, I'm going to challenge my brother now without Atlan's trident. And he just didn't have to, and you could have just not given them, not through the tongue tied. You could have just not given him that option. Like, why do they have to meet up in the first place in Atlantis? We know that the guy who trained Aquaman is capable of going to the surface. He did it to train Aquaman in his youth. And Mira can clearly go to the surface because she goes to the surface to get Aquaman in the first place. So why not, if you wanted to all meet on the surface, if you just wanted to all get together, why not just all get together on the surface? Because sneaking Aquaman into Atlantis introduces just so many more variables into the equation. What if Aquaman gets caught? What if we get stopped before we even enter Atlantis? If we do get caught, how are we going to escape Atlantis together? There's like so much bullshit that they have to try and like get past, because of the fact that she doesn't just bring the message to him. That it just was very easily avoidable, and it just seemed like an unnecessary thing to do. I get, for story purposes, it's a good way to show the audience Atlantis through the eyes of Aquaman, because Aquaman's never been to Atlantis' main city. So it's like, wow, I'm seeing it for the first time, and the audience is seeing it for the first time. Um, and I get that. I definitely get what it's like for narrative purposes, but just as a plan in the plot, that just seemed really careless and unnecessary. Um, Also, Mira is wearing like this really nice jellyfish dress during the first Orm versus Aquaman fight. But then when Aquaman needs help in the fight, Mira shows up in a vehicle and she's no longer dressed in the nice jellyfish dress, which means Mira was watching the fight. You see her watch the fight, so you know she was watching the fight. She's watching the fight in the jellyfish dress. At a certain point, she's like, fuck this. I can't watch the fight anymore. I gotta help him. She then changes out of the dress, gets in a ship, shows up, saves Aquaman, and dips. And it just feels like a lot for her to have had to do all at once. She also explains to Aquaman that yo, Monkey D. Luffy, welcome to the stream. It's good to have you. Spoilers for Aquaman, by the way. She also explains to Aquaman that by making this choice, she's like saying, oh, I'm putting like Atlantis behind me. Like I essentially have like cut my whole nation to try and like save both worlds, to save the surface and to save the sea, and that my family will never take me back, and that my nation will never take me back. I'm essentially a traitor, and I did this all to help you. Monkey D. Luffy said, you up so early / late. You right. I have to study some flashcards, so I've been studying for my Security Plus exam. So I end up studying late, and then I go to sleep, and then wake up like closer to the afternoon kind of thing. But right now, I'm getting my getting my thoughts out on Aquaman. This is my top 10 things I didn't like about the new Aquaman movie. But anyways, back to the Aquaman. So Mira throws all like everything behind to save Aquaman, and it just feels like an unnecessary sacrifice. She didn't have to throw everything behind to try and save Aquaman because she just could have put herself in a position where she didn't have to save Aquaman in the first place. It's just unnecessary. So I thought that was really weird. Okay, so moving forward from that, from the whole like having to save Aquaman thing, Monkey D. Luffy said you've already seen it. Nice. Yep, I saw it earlier today. So this is all like fresh off the top of my head. So another thing, I didn't write this on my list of top 10 things I didn't like, but here's another thing I didn't like. Um, Orm meets up with Mira's dad in like a weird location to try and be like, hey, your army should join my army so that we can take over the surface. And Mira's dad is playing like hard to get. Like, oh, I don't know. It seems like you really need me in order to take over the surface. And you can't do it without me, so I'm just gonna not help you. And then Orm has the stupid plan where he's like, I'm gonna get Black Manta to take a submarine, like a surface submarine, and shoot it at us in the hopes of making it be like, oh no, the surface attacked us. Sounds like we gotta go to war with the surface, but it's only one sub. It's a single submarine. And it's like, why would the surface send one submarine? How would the surface know that you guys were meeting in this arbitrary location? Why is that the only attack the surface did? Um, why wouldn't the surface try and do like a better attack, just something that was stronger? It just felt stupid. And then it's later revealed because Mira asked her dad about it. She's like, that seems really convenient. Monkey D. Luffy said one submarine equals full military force. Yeah, and Mira's like, it seems really convenient that when Orm asked you to join his army, that the surface happened to attack for the one and only time they've ever attacked us. You know, like yeah, it just seems really odd. And then her dad's kind of like, and then Mira's like, oh, you fucking knew. You knew that like that wasn't a real attack. And then Mira's dad just straight up says, fuck it, you got me. I just wanted to attack the surface. Orm's right. I want to fuck up the surface. And it's like, well, why did you play hard to get with Orm? Like, what did he want Orm to do or say to convince him of something he already wanted to do? It just didn't make any sense. So Orm had this really stupid plan to try and convince Mira's dad to do something that Mira's dad already wanted. And why? Um, Aquaman is given the choice of whether or not to save Black Manta's father early on in the movie. And I understand what Aquaman does, because Aquaman makes the Batman Begins choice, but at the beginning of his movie. So in Batman Begins, there's this big plot line about like Batman doesn't kill people, and that's why he's weak. And then at the end of the film, Batman's like, I don't kill people, but I don't have to save anyone either. So when Ra's al Ghul is gonna die, Ra's al Ghul is like, but you're weak, you can't kill me, so I know that I'm not gonna die. And then Batman's like, but I don't have to save you, and he just fucking dips, and Ra's al Ghul like dies, right? Um, but in The Dark Knight Rises, that later bites Batman in the ass when Ra's al Ghul's daughter is like, you let my dad die, and now I want revenge. So Aquaman learns that lesson in this movie. They give him that arc in one film instead of in three films. So because Aquaman's like, I don't have to save you, Black Manta's dad, Black Manta attacks Aquaman, and then within the same film, Aquaman's like, damn, if I had just shown mercy, I wouldn't have had to have like made a new enemy. There was no reason to just make enemies, and I should show mercy because the consequences of not showing mercy can be greater than just showing mercy and letting people have second chances. So that's a great lesson. It's a great character arc, but it's also Aquaman being a petty nigga. Like, so Black Manta and Black Manta's father are pirates. They did threaten an entire submarine of like armed Navy men. They attacked innocent people who weren't hurting anybody. So I totally get where Aquaman's coming from with like, these pirates are bad people. We don't need to help these bad pirates. But at the same time, couldn't you just have them get like arrested? Like there's like a justice system. Aquaman is aware of how like law works. So you could just let them get arrested. Right now they're pirates. They've just been able to like go free and just do shit. But by leaving them for dead, what if they don't die? What if, what if they do get away? Like Aquaman's not thinking of the consequences of letting them get away. Sure, they could die, but if they don't die, of course they're gonna be like a potential threat to you in the future. It just doesn't make much sense. I'm glad that Aquaman learns the lesson, but he could have just saved him and then arrested them, and they wouldn't have been a problem. It's just Aquaman being like short-sighted and a little petty. I don't know. I thought that was kind of lame. When they're flying over the desert, right? And Mira has this tracking device that allows her to figure out where the hidden kingdom in the desert is. Why doesn't she give that to the pilot? If the pilot of the plane had the tracking device for the hidden kingdom, then he could have landed the plane at the entrance. He could have been like, oh, the device is telling me that I need to land, and then they could have landed there. When Mira jumps out of the plane into the desert and Aquaman follows her, they have this whole scene where they're like, oh, we're lost, just walking in the desert. You're just following the stupid tracker. There's just empty desert for miles. This is lame. Why are we doing this? Why are you doing it? You had a plane. Just let the plane land so that when you get to your destination, you don't have to walk for miles just randomly. And then, not only do they have to walk for miles, but once you find what you're looking for in the desert, how do you get out of the desert? Which is my next question. How on earth did Aquaman and Mira escape the desert after they found what they were looking for? So I get they had the tracking device thing to find what they were looking for in the desert, but after you get that, you left the plane. You took a plane to get there. So you needed a plane to get to the desert. So once you found what you were looking for in the desert, did you just walk? They go to Italy next. Italy is they were in the desert. How'd you get to Italy? It's just not explained either. It's just like a cutaway and then they're in Italy. And that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how that happened. Um, so one of the clues that they find in the desert is a map that's inside of a bottle. And they get like a list of like vague instructions from like a hologram of Atlan. And one of the instructions has to do with using like a thing in a bottle in order to find something, right? And when you find the bottle and the bottle has a map in it, your first thought will be, oh, so the map is the thing in the bottle that I need. You don't think to yourself, I need the bottle. You think, I need the map in the bottle. My question is, why did they bring the bottle to Italy? What made them go, oh, we opened the bottle, we found the map, and the map tells us to go to Italy. Let's also bring the bottle. We got to take the bottle with us. Because the bottle was necessary. They needed the bottle in order to solve the next clue. But there's nothing that lets you know from the hologram message that the bottle is required. It says like something within the bottle will let you like find the way. It's some shit like that, right? And what happens is when you look through the bottle, the base of the bottle has like an engraving in it, and when you put it in a statue's hand and look through the perspective of the statue, you see where you need to go. But they don't know all that. They don't know all that ahead of time. So you can just pocket the map. Mira claims that she can just memorize shit. So they could have just looked at the map and Mira could have just been like, tear it up. Can't let Orm get his hands on this map. So it just didn't make sense for them to bring the bottle. Once he used the bottle, it was like, oh, I'm glad they brought the bottle. But it's also like, why would you? There's no reason to have it. You wouldn't know that you needed the bottle. So another thing that's weird. Black Manta really wants to kill Aquaman, which makes sense. It makes total sense that he wants to kill Aquaman because Aquaman straight up lets his father die. Monkey said, honestly, I'd smash the bottle instantly and take the map, right? Because there's no reason to keep it. It's just a bottle as far as you're aware. So Black Manta clearly does want to kill Aquaman. Aquaman let his father die. It makes sense that he want to. He gets hired by Orm to assassinate Mira and Aquaman. Now, what's weird about this is that they give Black Manta this experimental Atlantean technology. They're like, here, have this cutting edge Atlantean gear. This is for you. You can just have access to this. But then when they point out this gun that converts water into like plasma and shoots it as like a rifle blast, he's like, "Oh, that's too dangerous." He goes, "Oh, you shouldn't use that." It's like, then why'd you put it in the case? Why'd you get? Why'd you? He says you shouldn't use it. It's too dangerous and experimental. He then watches him use it and then lets him have it. And it's like, why'd you give it to him? This is experimental Atlantean tech that you think is too dangerous. So why'd you take it? And then Black Manta's stupid ass is like, dangerous, experimental. Guess I gotta shoot it right now. So he shoots it and everything's fine. But then he like Tony Starks it. He goes, "This is cool, but what if it was built into my mask and could shoot lasers out of my eyes? What if I had laser vision using this?" And he somehow takes experimental technology that even Atlanteans are like, "This is new. We don't fully understand how it works. It's too dangerous." And he makes it into like a special suit. He makes the Black Manta suit. But nothing in the movie lets you know that Black Manta would be capable of this. You know that he's a pirate. You know that he has this great reputation. He comes from a family of pirates. And that his grandfather was known as the Manta, and he has like this Black Manta dagger that he's always used. And he comes from a badass pirate family. But they have like connections to Atlantis somehow, because they can work for Atlantean royalty and shit. And he's like actually a genius who knows how to incorporate like Earth technology and Atlantean technology together. And they just don't go over that. They don't. It just happens, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess he can do that now. And I get that trying to fit that into the movie would have been weird, but it just feels out of nowhere. You're just like, what? How does that work? Speaking of out of nowhere, it's never really explained what Mira does to cure Aquaman's wounds. Because when Aquaman fights Black Manta, it's the most fucked up Aquaman gets the whole movie. Like, Aquaman fights so many people, but Black Manta, like, burns his arms, he slashes into Aquaman multiple times, and then you're like, man, Aquaman's gonna be fucked for the rest of this movie. And then Aquaman's on a boat, and he just has, like, seaweed tied around his injuries. And he removes the seaweed, and the injuries are gone. And then Mira doesn't go like, oh yeah, I enchanted the seaweed. Oh, the special kind of seaweed heals people. Oh, my water, when I mix it with plant life, has like a healing effect. There's like no exposition. Aquaman takes the shit off, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna attack by the trench. And it's like, what? What? Was that, can Aquaman do that with any kind of seaweed? How does that work? Why did that work? It just isn't explained in the same way that like Black Manta being able to mess with Atlantean tech isn't explained. Speaking of unexplained Black Manta shit, Black Manta uses the blade that was passed down to him from his father, that was passed down to him from his grandfather before him, that has the Black Manta on it, where Black Manta gets his name from. He uses the blade on Aquaman in their second fight. Now, you may be like, what's the problem with him using it in the second fight? So in the first fight, Black Manta thinks he can stab Aquaman with normal blades. He tries to use his arm blades to cut Aquaman. And Aquaman is blade proof. So he's like, aha, that doesn't work. And he dicks Black Manta. So then when Black Manta gets hired by Orm to kill Aquaman, Orm's like, the reason why you failed before is because you didn't have these Atlantean steel blades. Atlantean steel can cut an Atlantean, so it can cut Aquaman. So it's like, oh, okay, now that Black Manta has Atlantean steel, he can fuck up Aquaman. And he does. He proceeds to fuck up Aquaman in the second fight with the Atlantean steel blades. But Black Manta, during the fight, pulls out the Black Manta dagger given to him by his father, and it successfully stabs into Aquaman. And you're like, what? Why would he do that? So Black Manta's father told Black Manta that like this knife has never failed his grandfather. It has always worked. blah 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 blah. So maybe he's taking his father's word for it and trying to stab Aquaman, and it just happens to work. Like, is it made out of Atlantean steel? Never explained. We may never know whether or not it was Atlantean steel or not. Seems like it must have been, because it does stab into Aquaman. I saw that and I was like, why would you do that? Because last time he tried to use normal blades against Aquaman, Aquaman just broke that shit. He was like, it doesn't matter. Get that shit out of here. Um, but it didn't do it for that, and I was like, that was just a shot in the dark. Like, there was no way that Black Manta would have known that would work ahead of time. And also, if he is going off of what his father said, that the blade never failed his grandfather, why didn't he use the blade in the first fight then? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense at all. So the Crawlin is this legendary, not kraken essentially, that is the fiercest sea monster in the ocean. It's legendary throughout Atlantis. It guards Atlan's trident. It's this big badass monster. And Aquaman's mother is like, I've fought the Crawlin multiple times and I've never beat it. We get to see the Crawlin fight all the armies of Atlantis. And the Crawlin dicks on all the armies of Atlantis. And you just have to ask yourself, how the fuck did Aquaman's mom fight the Crawlin multiple times and never die? You know, it's one thing for Aquaman's mom to be like, I survived the trench, because it seems like the main way to survive the trench is race through the trench as quickly as possible, hopefully with some light source on you because the trench are afraid of light, get to the weird portal to the center of the earth, and then just chill in the center of the earth and like hunt dinosaurs and shit and eat fruit. Got him. Game plan. So I can believe that she survived all that. That makes sense. What I can't believe is that on multiple occasions she went to the Crawlin, a beast who, when you see Atlan's tomb, it's just covered in like fucking dead skeletons just everywhere. And she didn't die. The Crawlin never is like, I'm just tired of your shit, I'm just gonna eat you. You know, I the Crawlin shows no mercy in the fucking final battle. So I don't see how the Crawlin could be like, I fought you time and time and again, and it never just like kills her. Is it because she's royalty? Can the Crawlin sense that she's royalty? Um, the Crawlin doesn't really seem to sense that Aquaman's royalty. It can just sense that he's like a half blood. So I don't know. I could believe that Aquaman's mother was living in the center of the earth. I couldn't believe that the Crawlin never killed her. That didn't make any sense. Why doesn't Mera always carry at least a small container of water in order to use her powers on land? There are multiple instances where Mera is fighting people and she's like, I can't use my power on land. And there's a really cool scene where she uses wine bottles that are surrounding her in order to do like a super move and take out multiple guys at once. That was really nice. I would have liked to have seen more of her using improvised water sources. One other time is when she pulls sweat from Aquaman's head in order to unlock Atlan's hologram message or whatever. But I also feel like while it's cool to see her improvise it, she knows she's going to be on land and she knows her power is to control water. Just carry water with you. Also, Aquaman doesn't really talk to fish a lot in the movie. And I know people joke on him for it, but one of my favorite things from the old Aquaman comics is that Aquaman would talk to sea life like telepathically or whatever. And that he understood what each different type of fish was capable of doing. So he would call on the specific type of fish that he needs for a certain situation and then use that fish's special ability in order to overcome the situation that he was in. He only calls on fish like once really in the movie before he gets Atlan's trident, and that's to call on the whale in order for him to like hide. What I think is weird is this is something that Aquaman's been able to do forever, like since he was like a little boy. But there's never a scene where he's talking to like the guy who trained him in combat, and the guy goes, "Hey, I noticed that you can like talk to fish. That's rare. Nobody does that shit. And then Aquaman go, what? Nobody does that shit? I wasn't aware that no one does that. Because him and Mira have a conversation where Mira's like, you can talk to fish. Nobody does that shit. And then Aquaman's like, yeah, I can talk to fish. That's weird. Nobody does that shit. It just seems like that's something that he would have known like forever ago, and he should have used it against Orm. But apparently, no one had the talk with Aquaman that talking to fish is not something everyone can do. So because he didn't know he was special, he doesn't use his specialty ever, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. He could have beat Orm in the first fight if he was like, yeah, oh, by the way, boom, boom, I just control the ocean, nigga, boom, 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 just fish everywhere, got him. You know, it just felt weird. Because I feel like that would have changed the whole tide of the movie, and it's just something that should have came up at some point in his life. Someone should have just sat down with him and was like, that's different. Nobody does that. That's special. You know, some special shit. You should use that. It would be really important. I'm just saying. I'm just asking some questions. um, my last pet peeve out of my top 10 things that I didn't like about the Aquaman movie. I love Aquaman's suit, but what makes him put on a dead man's clothes? That's my question. I don't understand why Aquaman goes, oh man, I got Atlan's trident. My powers to communicate with sea life have been amplified tremendously. I can talk to and control any creature in the sea. I'm just essentially a god of the sea. And then he's like, but also I gotta wear this dead king's clothes. I think that's creepy. The implication is that he gets the trident, and then in front of the crawling, he strips naked underwater, which sounds like you get water stuck in your clothes when you put clothes on. He strips naked underwater, and then he puts his clothes on underwater, the king's clothes, and the king's clothes fit him pretty much exactly. It's a perfect fit. It's badass. Love King Atlan's clothes. They're super dope. Um, but it just sounds unsanitary and unappealing. Like you wouldn't want to do it. Nothing should make you want to put on a dead guy's clothes. It's nasty. It's like the one of the nastiest things Aquaman does in the whole movie. Um, so yeah, those are the main things that I didn't like about the Aquaman movie. Another bonus thing I didn't like: the desert isn't used as an action set piece. So most places in the film that Aquaman goes, whether it be the lighthouse where Aquaman was born, or even just like going to a secret meeting in Atlantis, he always ends up in like a fight or in some really cool action scene at every location he goes. But he goes to the desert and it's just kind of boring. It's like the slowest part of the film is my least favorite scene in the film. Monkey D. Luffy said, I'm back, so we put on a dead dude's clothes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was gross. He didn't need to put on King Atlan's clothes. I just went over a whole thing on that. It's just nasty, and he didn't need to put on a dead guy's clothes. It was dumb. But the desert, I guess I'm gonna go deeper on the desert because it was my least favorite scene in the movie. Out of the whole film, I think the desert scene was just bad. Like I said, it didn't make any sense that she didn't give the pilot the tracking device when they're bickering in the desert about like trying to get to the hidden kingdom is stupid, because of the fact that she could have just given it to the pilot. When they find the entrance to the hidden kingdom, it was more likely that they would die, even with the tracking device. Like if the tracking device is just like right here, you go in this hole, it's just like a leap of faith, and you just gotta grab a ledge or eat shit and die. So it's it's just more likely that you wouldn't survive that, is my thing. And the ledge they grab is also the exact ledge that they need to grab onto to get to the message. It's not like they have to go through any precarious traps. They don't do anything to make the desert interesting. It's just a desert. And it's supposed to be like a chance for Aquaman and Mira to get closer to each other. And you're starting to get like the vibe of them trying to have like a romance. But it's not interesting to me. Italy was better, but even the first part of the Italy sequence to me was also like the next like worst part of the movie. It was better, but there are just a few different things that rub me the wrong way about the desert scene. The desert scene starts with like the first really obvious licensed music in the film. And licensed music in movies can go a long way. I actually really like how licensed music was used in Deadpool 2 for a fight scene. I feel like they did a good job at that. But when they use the licensed music to transition into the desert, the idea is that the airplane they're in is playing the music. So that's their excuse for playing the music. But I was like, oh, this is starting to get silly. And then Mira jumps out of the plane, and the pilot's like, what? She jumped out of the plane? And then I was like, redheads, and he jumps out. And I'm like, this is getting kind of silly. Like, I think the plot's going to start to get dumb now, and I don't like that. And then I felt like the Atlan message where it's like, oh, you just gotta put water on the message while it's in the little uh, pedestal, podium, whatever the fuck it is, and then it activates. I was like, well, that's kind of basic. I don't know. It just seems like the shittiest part of their quest. If it's supposed to be like this massive quest where there are all these dangers and trials and shit, them going to the desert was the shittiest one. It was just not entertaining. Um, and I just didn't like the desert scene. The desert scene made me think the Italy part was going to be bad. I thought the movie was going to go downhill from the desert part. It didn't, luckily. It goes up once Italy becomes an action set piece. It's like, oh, the movie's finding itself again. But that desert scene really made me lose hope in the film. I thought the film was just going to suck from that point on. And I don't think you ever want to be sitting in a movie and be like, I think this is the part where it's going to get bad. You know? So the desert scene definitely was my least favorite scene throughout the whole movie. So Monkey D. Luffy said, so out of 10, how would you rate the movie? So that's actually a good question. I think the easier way for me to rate Aquaman is to rate it against the other films in the DCEU. So what I always say, instead of saying out of 10 for Aquaman, I say that Aquaman is the best DC Cinematic Universe film that is out so far. Um, I love the characters in it. The best villains in the DC Cinematic Universe so far have come out of Aquaman. The best fight scenes, arguably the Batman fight scene in Batman v Superman, where he's fighting all the thugs and it looks like a scene straight out of an Arkham video game. That was pretty good. That was a pretty good ass scene. But I would just say, instead of out of 10, that Aquaman was just the best film of the DCEU. And I'll do a whole video about everything I liked about Aquaman a little bit later. This is too much to go into the bad and the good of Aquaman. Monkey D. Luffy said, have you seen Venom? I did see Venom. Interestingly enough, Venom and Aquaman gave me kind of similar vibes from the trailers. So both trailers had a lot of CGI in them. Venom, I can't say had a lot of CGI. They didn't show you a lot in the Venom trailers. But the Venom trailers made me think that the CGI was going to be bad, and that I wasn't going to like the CGI in the movie. Aquaman trailers, I didn't think the CGI was going to be bad, but I thought they were showing so much that was going to be CGI that I was going to look at the movie and be like, this is practically a cartoon. I'm just looking at a video game. And I thought that the CGI might have been like negative, right? Um, this is Monkey D. Luffy said, oh, I thought you were just hating on this movie. No, Aquaman, I think, is like the best DC Cinematic Universe film so far. This video just exists to talk about all the things I didn't like about it. There's a lot that I did like about the film, but there is definitely 40 minutes of time I could spend on a live stream talking about the bad stuff. So it's not a perfect film, not at all. But it definitely does a lot of things right, but it has things that it could have done better. You know what I mean? So a lot of people are saying that Aquaman is an okay film, but one thing that I feel like people kind of overlook when they talk about these movies is the fact that these movies take place in a greater cinematic universe. So when you look at Aquaman, you don't just look at Aquaman as one film. You look at, what does this one film now add to the cinematic universe as a whole? Now we have the introduction of Atlantis, of all the Atlantean kingdoms. We have the ocean in the center of the earth. Like, all these like set pieces now exist. If you ever want to use Atlantis or any of these kingdoms in a future DC movie, it doesn't even have to be an Aquaman movie, you can, and you can reference all of these things. There's all this lore that's been built about the Atlanteans and their history, and you can revisit that in like future movies. So Aquaman by itself is like the best DC cinematic universe film, not only for all the things that the film does right, but all the things that the film does to further build the world of DC within the movies. And that's a big part of what I appreciate about the film. That being said, I feel like I'm going to do a different video to talk about everything that I like about Aquaman. Monkey D. Luffy said, yeah, like how Black Panther showed up in Infinity War. Yeah, like how they went to Wakanda in Infinity War. It's a very similar vibe. Um, Speaking of which, in a video where I talk about everything that Aquaman did good, I'm still not sure if I'm going to make a video like that because I do love the Aquaman movie. I'm sure you guys can tell that by now. I really did like it. Um, Aquaman, I feel like, did some things that straight up were just in the Black Panther movie better. Just straight up better. I was thinking about this before I started recording the video. So, in Black Panther, they do the whole royal combat. It's not called royal combat, it's ritual combat. And ritual combat is the idea where it's like, it's a ceremony kind of thing. I was gonna say ceremonious, but it's a ceremony-based combat that decides like who will be king. Black Panther and Aquaman both do the same thing, where you have one ritual combat near like the beginning of the film, and then you have one ritual combat near the end of the film. The one in the beginning of the film, the main hero um, has like an ambiguous loss where they don't win the ritual combat, but they don't necessarily lose it. And then near the end of the film, they finally get to do the ritual combat, but with their powers fully decked out. It's not like the first time where they're kind of like not ready for the fight. Essentially, throughout the film, between the fights, they prepared, and now they can like whoop each other's ass, right? So, Black Panther's ritual combat was not interesting. I know that's gonna split some hairs with some people. They're gonna be like, "What?" But keep in mind, during Black Panther's ritual combat, it's like you drink this thing and it makes you depowered, so you don't have the power of the Black Panther going through you. You're just like a normal guy with like a spear and a shield, and you're gonna fight by a waterfall, and you're gonna fight to the death. It's high stakes, right? You know, it's essentially a death bout. Because they don't have their powers, you're like, wow, you know, these are just normal guys fighting. But that's part of what makes it not that interesting. You know what makes Aquaman versus Ocean Master a spectacle? When they're fucking swimming at like a million miles per hour and they're just beating the shit out of each other with like tridents, and it's also to the death, and there's lava and it's underwater, it's in this huge state. You know, like, it's an interesting ass fight between like two practically like godly beings going at each other for the throne. And both fights are really good. Both fights are good as fuck. The Black Panther second fight is like heavy CGI, feels at times like a PlayStation 1 game because the CGI doesn't always hold up in the fight scenes. The fight isn't as interesting as it could have been. It just lacks. The second Aquaman fight also lacks a little bit. It doesn't do as much as the first one, to be honest. But it was still better than the Black Panther one, I'm just saying. Monkey D. Luffy said, oh, that's cool. He said, it really wasn't. They just kind of wrestled and jabbed with a spear. Right? Like, the Black Panther ritual combat would have been a lot more interesting if they fought with their Black Panther power. Like, you both get the opportunity to fight with that power, and you decide who does it better. And then whoever wins gets to keep it, and whoever loses is forced to drink the thing that strips them of their Black Panther power. That would have been a totally different fight. It would have been like two superhuman beings fighting for the chance to keep that power, to hold on to it, rather than two superhuman beings, rather than two normal people fighting to attain a superhero power. And it always made whoever was the current Black Panther get dicked, because it's like, oh, you're already king, your powers are an unfair advantage, and it strips you of them. And it doesn't test the other person on whether or not they could use the powers better, which I feel like is a better test. I don't know. But both did very similar things. Both are similar stories, where it's someone who's like, I have not been king of my country that is separate from the rest of the world, but now I have to become king, because if I don't become king, there's this relative of mine who's going to become king instead, and they're going to wage a war on the rest of the world from their kingdom. So, one thing I've noticed with superhero movies, they like to have very similar superhero movies by different companies come out like very close together. So, notice all the similarities between like Black Panther's plot and between like Aquaman's plot. Think about that, but like Wonder Woman and Thor Dark World. And also Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Like there were three movies that came out in the same year and they all were like the same plot. You have godlike power that you've never really unleashed before, and at the end of the movie you're gonna finally learn about this god power that you've never used, and you gotta use it in the final battle. Wonder Woman, you are the god killer. Peter Quinn, you are the son of Ego the Living Planet. Thor, you're the god of thunder. Why do you never use lightning? And then they all learn how to use it, and it changes them. Wow. And that was like all the same year. And I was like, why? Fucking Batman v Superman and Captain America Civil War. So you're telling me that in the same year, you're going to have two movies where the big focus is that multiple superheroes have to battle off against each other, and essentially like a superhero battle that's very high stakes. And in both films, a big crux of it is that the superhero who doesn't have powers and relies on money and skill in order to develop technology in order to help them fight, Mother Martha is killed by someone, and Martha becomes a significant plot point later on in the movie that then further either instigates a fight in the case of Civil War or causes the fight to be neutralized in the case of Batman v Superman. Why? So it's just interesting. It just happens to line up where these very similarly plotted films by different companies, and in some instances the same companies, seem to come out at the same time. And Aquaman and Black Panther, I feel like, came out at relatively close times to have very similar plot lines. But I do feel like Aquaman did it better. I feel like people are going to be like, no, Black Panther was the shit, Black Panther was great, I gave Black Panther like a 70. I didn't think Black Panther was bad, but I didn't think it was like the hottest shit out there. I actually preferred Black Panther in his Civil War film compared to how he was presented in his own movie. With Aquaman, I feel like he was fairly consistent between Justice League and this film, and that Aquaman's character definitely builds in his film more than in his previous movie. But I'm not looking at both movies and going, I feel like Aquaman was just a cooler character in Justice League than he was in this one. I feel like he's just as cool in both, but he does get cooler in his own movie as he progresses. But yeah, sorry, I feel like I went on a little bit of a rant, just talking about a whole bunch of different random shit. But all in all, Aquaman, best movie of the DC Cinematic Universe. If you haven't watched it already, but you're a fan of these DC Cinematic Universe movies, what are you waiting for? Like I said, best action, some of the best dialogue out of a DC Cinematic movie yet. Hit it up. Hit that up right now. Go to the theater. Do it. What are you waiting for? It's like, is it like 3 or 4 a.m. now? It's like really early in the morning. Get those early morning tickets. Go to that showing. I'd see it again. I saw it in 3D. You don't need to see it in 3D. It's not a movie where you have to see it in 3D. I'll just say that. One of the moments in 3D is Orm hugs his mom. And I was like, this hug is in 3D. Why'd they do that? This is like, definitely feel free to hit up. Monkey D. Luffy said, just do it. Just do it. Most def. But I'd like to thank you all once again for watching. Monkey D. Luffy said it's 5:32 a.m. for me. Fuck, what time is it for me? It's 4:32. So you're like an hour ahead. I'll let you all get to go to bed, because I gotta do my flashcards anyways. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding ding ding, ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we do these live streams. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black, the one and only, logging out. Monkey D. Luffy said good night. Good night, Monkey D. Luffy. Peace.